Welcome to the Eclipse OpenJ9 community call of May 27th. As always, please add your name and affiliation to the meeting agenda just so we know who's been attending. And then I'm going to pause for a minute and give people an opportunity to bring up any concerns or community-related questions they want to have or they want to raise now, or any items they want to add to the agenda. We'll just pause here for a second as I see more people are still joining the call, and so this will give those people a chance to do that while we have any discussions off the bat.
So I think this has been discussed before, but it came up in an issue this week. What's the reason why we're still building on Visual Studio 2010 for JDK 8?
What are the OpenJDK builds using right now?
I think JDK 13 is on Visual Studio 2013. We're looking to move it up to 2017.
We have historically been matching what the OpenJDK community has listed on their wiki as the base platform, and so we'll have to double check that.
Okay, I can have a look at that. But you would expect it to match that. That's fair. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Toby, are you on the call? If you are, you're on mute. I'm just checking the attendee list. Toby has not joined yet.
He's listed for next week, right? For his.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Thank you. I misread the dates, and I was all set to razz him about not being here to give the lightning talk, but
you're time traveling.
Yes. Thank you. So we don't have a lightning talk today then. Good thing I didn't advertise that. We do have one next week, and we have a couple of other options as potential lightning talks that we could be scheduling. So if you do have one that you want to give, please add it in here or reach out to me. We'll happily help get you scheduled to give those talks. And we'll take a quick look at the recent user-raised issues. There was a request that I create playlists on the OpenJ9 YouTube channel, which I will do, but it will probably take me a while. Still new to fiddling with OpenJ or with YouTube. There was also a NPE being thrown from J9 VM internals get stack trace. We've done some investigation there, and I believe the issue is moving to the JIT team. So I know Jason had been looking for that and had reached out for help on that. So if there's somebody on the JIT team who's able to jump in and provide some guidance on what he could be doing to further this investigation, that would help. SigQuit issue with Apache Kafka. I believe Babneet, the resident signal handling expert, is aware of this, and so I'll follow up with Babneet just to make sure that this is getting focused, and hopefully we can get that included in the upcoming release as well. The next one we have is a crash when running with instrumentation, which is also a crash while inlining. So again, if JIT committers can take a look at that and help move that forward, that would be appreciated. Okay, for the rest of these, we've talked about them on previous calls. Is there anything in this list that somebody wants to call out? Is needing attention or okay. So we'll go back to the agenda then, and I will just mention the help wanted and beginner issues. In particular, just more open and welcoming to our community. If you have small that that might be somebody to pick up, or new is an issue that would be a good starting place for somebody to get started with building and working with OpenJ9. Feel free to open that as a help wanted issue or a beginner issue, and leave those issues then for new committers and new contributors to the project. Andrew, have you had a chance to update the downloads? And
Andrew is not here today. I don't know that he has, so I would assume he hasn't.
I was late getting this document into the channel, so I would not be surprised that he hasn't had an opportunity. So, all right, then taking a look at our roadmap plan, we have our 021 release coming up in July, and the code split is on June the 7th, which doesn't leave us a lot of time between now and then, but it does leave us a lot of issues in this plan. There are currently 51 open issues against various people. So I just ask that everybody take some time this week to go through this list and to make sure that items tagged against them or in their areas, whether it's VM or JIT or GC or whatever it may be, are getting closed out and going to close out before that June 7th split date.
The other thing we could do is start moving things forward. So if you know something's not going to be resolved for this release, move it forward to the next milestone.
Yeah, that's a great point. In particular, if we can try and not move forward the user raised and the crashes, and make sure that we're bringing that list of items down, that would be appreciated. Timelines are short, so please coordinate through Slack or through the issues themselves to make sure that we're making progress on burning down that milestone plan.
I mean, if we know that a user issue can't be resolved in time for release, I think it would make sense to move it forward as soon as we know that, because that gives an indication to the user that it's not going to be resolved in this release, because we will move it forward eventually if it doesn't get resolved in time for the release.
Yeah, I agree with that. Clear communication is better, but when possible, let's get these closed out.
Absolutely.
Did anyone have any other comments or concerns around that release plan? All right. Then I guess we'll move to the regular adopt update.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually still typing it. Just as a note, based on what Sophia demonstrated in a recent lightning talk, we've put in the request to create a build OpenJ9 GitHub action repo in the Eclipse OpenJ9 organization. And we'll move her action there and then merge the PR for using GitHub Actions to run some nightly build and test at the OpenJ9 project. And the smart parallelization work that's happened at the adopt testing repos, we're in the middle of rolling that out, and how it affects OpenJ9 is that special system got converted right away, and very recently the functional testing is now enabled to use parallel builds. So I think we initially just are breaking it out into two, and hoping that we'll see a reduction in overall execution time for the functional tests. And then it doesn't really affect anyone at this project directly, but the next thing we'll be switching over, which is happening as we speak, are the external testing at Adopt.
There's a funny side effect. Whenever you get a test failure in a parallel run, it gets communicated to the parent as a failure instead of unstable. And then the parent waits for input to see if you want to restart or abort. So if you're running PR testing, you're going to have to wait for the timeout to occur before you actually see the status, I think, that it's failed.
Right. So we weren't going to enable it on PR testing, the GitHub Actions, or I see, for parallel. Yeah, I saw your direct message there. That means either we're going to have to put in that hacky piece of code into our Jenkins file base to carry upwards any child jobs state to the parent, or there was an actual fix in Jenkins that can do that propagation of state upwards, but I haven't looked to see what is required to pick up that fix. Probably Adam, if he's on the call, has a thought on that. The fix that went into Jenkins core itself.
I don't know about it, but I can look into it because I'd be interested in that as well.
Yeah. So when we look to do that at Adopt for the build pipelines and propagating state up, so that it is true, the core Jenkins functionality just says whatever state, if it's failed or unstable, it's going to roll up to the parent as failed. That now appears to be fixed in some version of Jenkins pipelines. So maybe it's just a matter of updating to that pipeline. I'm hoping we can just do that because I don't want to hold that piece of logic as a function in our scripts. I'd rather donate that as a fix to Jenkins itself, because that should be how it works. But so we'll follow up on that, Pete.
Yeah, so
There's
this
an issue that's been
does
resolved,
affect PR builds, right?
Well, it's going to affect any builds that are now auto-genning and like and because of the way you've structured your jobs at OpenJ9 to be able to start or restart things, yeah, you're going to get blocked, I presume.
So this is like a heads up for the committers that now when they run PR testing, if there's any failures, they're just going to sit there until the timeout period. I'm not sure what our timeout is for PR builds, but you might be waiting for 12 hours to see your results when something fails.
Yeah, well, we need to fix that obviously directly so that there isn't that wait. But I'd rather fix it by taking the updated Jenkins pipeline plugin stuff if it's been fixed there, which I understood from John Oliver it had been.
If that's possible, can we get it? I assume we need an issue opened a Bugzilla open for the Eclipse Foundation to do that update.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that that's true, and then, as I mentioned, that has to happen right away. You can't just let something time out for 12 hours before you know. So we'll look at that today.
Actually.
And then the rest of this was just from previous meeting. Maybe if Stuart's on the line, he probably has some updates on the RISC-V stuff. And if he's not on the line, I know the work is still going forward to shift the builds and try to get some testing enabled. We have a actual RISC-V board connected to the Jenkins.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button.
There we go.
Yeah, I am here. Yes, we have a RISC-V board at the moment. We haven't fully got it working yet. Fedora didn't seem to work particularly well on it, so we're going to try and switch that over to Debian. It's sitting in George's house at the moment, so nobody else can really do much with it in terms of reinstalling the operating system and so on. We've managed to build the RISC-V stuff as part of the main pipeline, so they should be getting built nightly now, and we've got a slightly better build JDK that they're running against now that appears to result in us being able to start up a Jenkins agent and on our virtual RISC-V's machine. And we've got someone testing the test jobs to see if they're working okay on that now. Previously, when we tried to start up the Jenkins agent, the Java underneath it would crash fairly quickly, and that does not seem to be the case anymore, which is good. So yeah, we're making good progress on that.
I'm just going to open up the issue here on the question around the API not giving the latest release. So this appears to be fixed. So I guess that's great. We can remove it.
Again, that was from, I hadn't finished clearing out the notes from our last meeting, that item. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that it is fixed. I haven't heard complaints recently about it, so I'm hoping it's true. But I think the only other thing I was going to add on to this is we're going to be adding the JDK, the rest of the JDK 15 builds for OpenJ9. Right now, it's only AIX. And we want to get the rest of the platforms building and testing at the Adopt project. Those hadn't been turned on yet. I'll put that in the minutes.
Thanks, Shelley. In terms of machine updates, Adam or Joe?
Just to add a bit more info to that previous conversation. So when the downstream test job fails, you do get a status update in the PR that says it's failed. And then the timeout to wait for user input is 5 hours, unless it's trumped by some other timeout that would come along sooner. I do see a Jenkins issue here that was resolved recently. I just have to read into exactly what happened. Along that thread, Eclipse is rolling out Jenkins LTS upgrades, and they want to do ours, but they couldn't find a suitable window themselves because we're always running stuff. So we need to figure out when we want to do that. So we can either have that discussion now, or I can talk to Pete after the call to figure out when we want to do that.
Probably makes sense for you and Pete to coordinate that directly.
Okay. And they will also be updating all of the pipe plugins as well. So that is something to watch out for. So I'm going to try and take a list of what there is pending, if I can. No, I can't. Okay, I'll have to think about that. We've had a few issues in the past, but generally it's pretty safe. But at least if we know what's changing, we can know what to look at when things break. Other than that, there was one Windows machine that I can't SSH into. I can ping it, so I'm guessing we just need to restart it on the soft layer UI, and I don't have access to that because Joe's away, but I think Stuart might have access to our instances, and if he does, we could get that restarted. That would be great. Windows machine number 5, I can ping him again.
Good to ping Stuart directly.
Okay. I think that's it for me. Everything else is stable. All the UNV issues are fixed. We've implemented numerous mitigation in case that happens again. So.
All right. In terms of the website design review, I think looking at the issue, Mark, Pete, and I have all given it a +1 to go forward with making the switch. I don't see Sue on the call.
Sue's not on the call, but Peter is. So yes, thank you very much for that, and we'll get it sorted as soon as we can.
Thanks, Peter. I'm just cognizant of the time because I have a hard cutoff at 11:30. So we're down to the any other business section here. And I guess I'll turn it over to you, Devin, to talk about the CMake transition.
Yeah, so all the bits for OSX, I think, are there. The nightly builds are stable. Barring any major objections, it looks like that switchover is going to happen sometime today. I have that issue 9709 for tracking that, and if anyone has some last minute objections there. But and a reminder, if you are on OSX, you are going to need CMake to start building JDK 11, and you can get that through Homebrew.
Yeah, if you can drop the commands for whatever the homebrew install CMake or whatever it may be into Slack for people to be able to find that easily, that would probably be useful.
All right.
I wonder if should we still keep building the non-CMake in the nightly build? We'd have to change the defaults YML to set up a build that we can use to build without CMake. Then if we have any problems, we'd be able to compare. Or if not, we could build it by hand, I guess.
I'm open to either way. Doesn't really matter to me.
Do we have machine resources to? I guess we've been running both of them right now.
Correct.
So it probably makes sense to build. Nightly as well, and we can cut that off after a week or so once we.
Isn't it the hope of running both ahead of time so that when we flick the switch, there shouldn't be any surprises?
That's what we're doing now. We're running both at the moment, and the CMake one looks good. But then once we do the switch, if somebody reports a problem, it might be handy to have the non-CMake build available just for easily being able to try stuff.
Right.
And I think we probably only need to do that for another week or so, and then we can turn off the UMA builds.
Yeah, the way these things work is nobody will notice for a month, and then all of a sudden people will notice problems. Or they'll notice when we do the next release.
Yeah, that would be the bigger concern, but maybe as we talk about the milestone builds and get people aware of those, that we'll get some feedback there. Are there any other comments on the CMake migration?
Are we targeting getting this? We're not going to do this right before .21, right?
Sorry, there was a bit of noise there. I couldn't hear you.
I was just asking, so like this hasn't landed yet, and we're kind of coming up on the split point for .21, so I'm assuming this is going to be post .21 at this point, right?
Given the lead up work into this, I was expecting that we would make the change on OSX before 21. We've been doing the dual testing and running the dual builds, and nothing has shown up. Sounds like you have concerns with that approach, though.
Well, it's just we have a week to the split, right? So if we're going to do it before, like, I certainly don't think it should happen after the split. So it's going to have to be switched in the next week, right? If we're going to do it.
Yeah, Devin was saying he would make the switch today. And we would continue to build the UMA build for another week or so. We've been building both already, with the default being UMA. We're going to make the switch on the default today and continue to build the UMA build as an alternative in our CI pipelines, just to have something easy to fall back to. Somebody discovers an issue.
Okay.
All right. Given the sort of 3 minutes that we have, Mark, is there any update you wanted to add to the interim release proposal?
Yeah, just very quickly. So I think we've settled on monthly releases as the goal here. I'm suggesting in that we target August as the first one of these, and then if we have enough trouble, or if that becomes too painful, we can just not do a September one, since we'll be doing JDK 15 that month anyway. So that, I think, alleviates the sort of pressure on doing this, and then get back on track after the October release for November or December if we can. That's my suggestion here. So I've documented that in the issue. If anyone has comments or concerns with that, please just add it to the issue.
All right. Thanks, Mark. I don't see Raghu on the line, so I think we'll skip the Helm discussion, given that that's continuing in the issue there. For the microjit issue, we have 2 minutes, so I don't think we have time to dig into this deeply. But Andrew, you had made a suggestion the other day that it might make sense to pull together a group of people interested in the evolution of this tech and how it might fit into the project, and have sort of a deeper architecture discussion around it. Is that something you had wanted to lead? So I guess I will follow up on this with Andrew and Scott via Slack, just being cognizant of the time. But that, if that's something that people would be interested in, please add your name as a potential attendee to that. All right, and then I will cut the call here for today, and we will discuss again on June the 3rd. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.